Yo boys, today I'm going to be bringing you my solo everything type build where you can solo everything in the open world. Let's jump straight into the armor here. We're running all Frigid Dawn except for our chest. Now you don't have to run Frigid Dawn. The main perk you want is Enchanted on your armor for soloing most things in open world. So Enchanted here, negative 4% damage from light and heavy attacks are really huge. But Frigid Dawn is really good because this helps you also in mutations because elemental aversion can be quite useful there. But the second most important part would either be refreshing or max HP, giving you some more health to be a bit more tanky, or some refreshing to reduce your cooldown. And then you also want your weapon perks on your gear. I'll go into what weapon perks you want here in a sec. But we have the Void Darkblade as our artifact of choice. This comes with Enchanted Physical Aversion. You can either put a weapon perk on here, or you can put a health. You would open up your map here. You get this from BB. The dungeon right here, Black Barnacles. It has to be mutated, so you can't get it this week, but you get it from right there. Frigid Dawn, if you are wondering, comes from this dungeon right here. Glacial Tarn has to be mutated once again. You can grab the Azoth Crystal set, which is from M2 plus, so you have to do M2s in any mutation. You can have a chance to drop it. And then for our weapon here, we have the drop Greatsword. It has Trenchant Strikes, the best perk on a Greatsword. You would ideally want a Tune here over Shirking Nature. And then I have Life Stealing here, just for some extra sustain. If you guys don't have a Greatsword, you want to farm one, I recommend grabbing the Greatsword in Eden Grove. It spawns right about here. There'll be a guy up top, you can farm him. Or there's a good Greatsword that comes from Merc as well. And you just mainly want to be looking for Trenchant Strikes or Trenchant Crits are very good. And then Attunement and Life Stealing here is very nice. Onto our spear here, you want Enfeeble Spear, Vicious, and Keen. Those are all very solid perks, but Enfeeble Spear is definitely the most important one to grab. If you are wondering where you grab an Enfeeble Spear, or where you can grab a really good spear, you want to grab the Tortoise Riven Spear or the Life Ring Spear. It's super good for PvP as well, so I highly recommend picking this one up. And you just basically want to farm a spear that you can put Enfeeble Skewer on, because this is huge damage reduction. 47% for 8 seconds is massive, giving you a lot of extra sustain. Amulet, I recommend grabbing the Life Ring Amulet. It comes with Divine and Health. That is also farmed once again in this area right here, Tortoise Riven. And then the third perk here, you would put in a protection perk. So let me show you an example of that. We'll scroll down here into my gear. You just want something like Thrust Protection or Slash Protection or Strike Protection for PvE. But since different mobs do different types of damage, this won't always be consistent. So do keep that in mind, but having a protection perk here is definitely what you want to put. Blood Drinker here, this gives you 25% damage negation, but you get 25% lifesteal, and all healing from lifesteal is increased by 5%. This is absolutely huge, giving you a bunch of extra sustain. And the damage reduction isn't actually 25%, it's more like 13 to 15%, so it's not that big. You get another thing of lifestealing, Hearty, and then I put slash damage on it because most of our damage will be coming from the Greatsword. And then the Wood Grain Earring, we have Fortifying Toast, Refreshing Toast, and Regenerating. That's basically best in slot for most medium and heavy armor builds. And you want to grab that right here by farming this guy again. Now, since I don't have an artifact here, I will tell you which artifact you should grab. Ideally, you want Serenity for this build. With Serenity, this build would absolutely go insane. But I am right now PvP track 128, and I still do not have it. So I doubt most people have it right now. But the other good option would be farming Venom from this guy right here. So when you heavy attack with Venom, you give a dot, giving you more DPS. So Venom is the artifact I would recommend farming if you want the artifact spear for this. Plus, it's a really solid artifact, and I highly recommend picking that up. If you are wondering the gem setups, I recommend just running all Onyxes just for open world, simply because once again, mobs will have different types of damage, strike, slash, or thrust, and Onyxes are just best versus everything. So you just put Onyx in all your gear here, and you'll have pretty good damage reduction down here. I just have 10-10, and I'm missing 4, so I would have an additional like another 10%. So I have 20% from all physical damage, which is what majority of mobs do. And then if I have first any elemental damage, my Frigid Dawn here will help, because this is 4.5%. Damage reduction versus all ranged elemental attacks. Now, if y'all wondering where you get Blood Drinker, by the way, you get this from Starstone Barrels, the mutation, so you can grab it this week. I highly recommend picking this up. Huge artifact for PvE soloing. Highly recommend farming this, even if you don't want to run this build. Here we have Skewer, Perforate, and Javelin. Javelin just for the rent here. If you are fighting a mob that can be knocked down, you can run Sweep instead for a CC. But Javelin, when you Javelin somebody above 50% HP with the perk, so you need the perk to make Javelin useful here, by the way. Let me grab the perk right here. you inflict a rend above 50% health, reducing the armor between 5 and 41% for 10 seconds. That's huge for extra DPS. That's why I have it. Now, if you don't have this perk on, then I would recommend running just Sweep for an extra knockdown to be more useful at that point. And then this is how I would run the Spirit Tree. The reason why you run Prep right here is because this has a rend for 15% for 10 seconds. Rend is increased to 10% per strike against targets above 50%. So when they're above 50, this is a 30% rend. And then you also get a weaken to them for 5 seconds, so they do less damage to you. And if you can grab the perk for that one, which is really good, you can also get Fortify, increasing your armor per hit, which is huge, making you a lot tankier. So that's very important to get on your armor. And then the Skewer perk, as we mentioned, or 47% weaken. That's on a 15% cooldown. So this has basically 50% uptime. Absolutely huge. And if you have like refreshing on, you're going to have higher uptime on this. But this just applies a bleed to the enemy. And you're mainly just using your Spirit bar here as a debuffing bar for your Greatsword. So Ren here, and Ren here. And weaken here. So you basically just want to switch to your bar real quick. Just spam everything on this bar. You know, light attack weave, and then swap back to the great sword here. But these are the passives. This does extra damage per debuff on the target, which will help lots of debuffs on them. So this will always be proccing, and that's the reason why you run this passive. Another important passive is the first successful dodge after an ability within 2 seconds reduces all spirit cooldowns by 20%. This is super broken. I highly recommend dodging at least once during this to get faster reset on everything. That allows you to have higher uptime on your abilities. So do keep that in mind. Super strong to dodge and attack. And the reason why we come all the way down here is because I want my stamina regeneration rate to be increased by quite a bit here while on the spear, to make sure we have a lot of stamina regen. This gives me some extra 4-5 heavy attack. You can also grab this passive here if you want. Light attacks at 5% increased crit chance, but once again we're more on the spear to debuff than do damage. So now on to our greatsword here. Our greatsword, I still chose to run the onslaught tree, even though primarily we're going to be using the defiance tree when we are PvEing. And that's because you get the rend from Skyward Slash here, which is huge. And that's 15% rend for 10 seconds, which is an insane amount of extra damage once again. So we just want to rend the boss as much as possible, so we deal as much damage as much as possible, so we can heal more from our blood drinker. Just add the follow-up attack here to deal more burst damage. And then I just grab all my passives here, all super useful. I don't really like Keen Posture. You can slot this if you want, but I just think there's better things. But Charge Heavies, 15% armor penetration, huge. The haste here is just nice for extra mobility. Energize here, insane passive, critical hit, 575% base health. Crush the Weak, everything will always have a debuff on it. Relentless Power, and then you also get Adaptive Rush, which heals you when you're in Defiance stance. So if you're in Defiance and you use this, you get a heal. And then Onslaught here, the most important one is Charge Heavies, reduce all my cooldowns by 10%. This allows me to keep 100% uptime on Roaring Rupture. Base damage increase per Greatsword buff on you, huge. After gaining Defiance stance, you get 25% fortification for 5 seconds. This is really nice because we actually go in and out of Defiance stance like every basically 10 seconds. So having this is super good. Unflinching Blade here, Charge Heavy have Grit. Very important for PvE because you get staggered a lot. And then Arrow Deflection, this blocks his range attacks while you are in Defiance stance. And this also reduces the stamina damage dealt by attackers when you block when you're heavying. Super good. And then Roaring Rupture here is massive. This cleanses 2 debuffs on you. This also applies a weaken to the enemies for 10 seconds. You become uninterruptible for 5. And you gain 10% fortify for 10 seconds. So it's very stat dense. And if you are wondering, like, you can spin in like this, hit the skyward, and then use this, and just go into heavying. And my attributes here, I ran 350 dex, 112 strength with 100 constitution. I left it like this just simply because if you want to run more con, you can. But I found that 100 con is all I personally need for this build. So I will go the 150 strength route and get this 15% stamina regeneration while exhausted. That's very important once again, because our stam is basically everything to us. Because when our stam is up, we can block more. And blocking more means we have more survivability. So that's why I chose to go 150 stam. 150 strength here. I haven't had really a problem being under 100. If you guys don't want to run my stats split up and you want 200 constitution, then you would run 200 strength with 200 dexterity. And then for the stat food, make sure you bring in your banana bread or your roasted rabbit here for your con food. Honing stones are very important, so tier 3 is all you would generally need. And then make sure you bring in your ward potion and your coatings. This is 15% damage against the enemy you are fighting. Huge DPS increase. And ward potions are 10% damage absorption versus the enemies you are fighting. Absolutely huge for making you more tanky. This gives you a lot of extra survivability. And I highly recommend picking this up. If you're going to fight some harder enemies, this is basically 25% overall stat increase, which is absolutely massive for PvE, and I highly recommend doing it. You can also bring oak flesh bombs, since most of the stuff you'll be fighting in open world is physical, where if you're in a tight situation, you can pop this. And this actually isn't 35% damage absorption, it's 35% armor, so don't get confused. New World lying here. And make sure you also have your trophies in your towns, by the way. So I have some trophies in Windsward, right? This increases my damage to mob types. It's about 3 to 4% for trophies. You can stack it up to 3 times in different houses. So you have 3, I got 3% in Windsward, 3% in Monarchs, and 3% in Ebon. That's 9% damage total. Towards a certain enemy, that's also a big damage increase. And I highly recommend picking that up versus the enemies that you're fighting. They're also relatively cheap on the market too, by the way. And then after that, just make sure you have your health potions. You can have mana potions here if you want, and your regen potions as well. So if I'm fighting an enemy, I just like to start with skewer. Go for the pref right here. Go for the Ren, and then I can spin in like this. Pop Defiance there, and then it's heavy, and then I basically am unkillable. As you can see here, they don't do any damage to me now. And if I want to go back, get the weaken, so everyone's weakened, huge rend. And if I don't feel safe, I don't have to do anything else. I can just go straight into the Defiance stance here and I'll be completely fine. As you see, my ability will always be up before I run out of cooldown. I can spin and get a nice heal there. Go back into skewering. Do that. Hit him with the javelin. I can skyward slash him because I know he can't kill me, right? And then if I feel in danger, I'll just immediately Roaring Rupture and I won't try and use any onslaught abilities. Because you have to remember, when you're in onslaught, you take 15% more damage. That's very bad if you are unsure. So you can just play it safe and sit in the Defiance tree. It's completely fine. Confident in when to use Skyward Slash. And Skyward Slash is a 15% rend, which increases my overall damage. Super nice. And then onto our Heart Rune. Our Heart Rune here is the Solar Heart Rune form. And the reason why this is super broken is because it gives us Fortify, which is super nice, but the Mending form is also very nice. But the main reason you run this is you run this for the fact that you cannot be CC'd during the Heart Rune. So when I pop this and I'm glowing with stone, right? Nothing can stagger me in PvE anymore. So if you're having a lot of trouble with staggers, you pop this and you become unstaggerable. So you can't be CC'd and you can do your damage freely and not have to worry about getting staggered. It's humongous in terms of extra survivability. Highly recommend picking that up. If you want to get that from Lazarus. You don't have to do mutated. You can just do normal Laz to grab stone form. You don't really need to even upgrade it for the purpose that I'm describing, but upgrading it is very nice because it has Fortify and Mending, which gives you a nice juicy heal. If you are wondering, this build will work in PvP as well. If you are wondering, it will work in PvP 100%. It will also work in dungeons. You can tank with this build as well, completely fine. You just have to slot out Carnelians here instead of Opals. This is why I run Opals, is because Opals synergize the best with the greatsword, and it's just Opals on Spears is super solid. You can run if you don't want to run Opal on Spear, you can run something like Jasper instead. That would be completely fine, because Jasper, when you get hit, you get 8% damage. That will give you some more extra damage on the Spear, so you'll be taking lots of hits in PvE. But Opal is just too good with the Greatsword, simply because you will never have 100% stam on Greatswords, because when you heavy, you consume stam, or when you're blocking, right, you also consume stam, which allow you to have basically 100% uptime on the Opal. And with that, boys, I would love to hear if you have any questions on the comments below. I stream every day on Twitch. Make sure to come check that out. And I want to make a huge shout out to all my Twitch Prime members and my YouTube channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support. And with that, I hope you guys all have a fantastic day.